Begin my questions to the member of the panel by asking Ambassador McGovern, didn't you regret having to be a bomber pilot?
Thank you. Before I answer that question, let me just say that I'm honored to have been invited to this platform. I'm especially pleased to sit next to General Goodpaster down at the end of the row. Throughout my adult life, have regarded him as one of the most thoughtful and one of the most far-sighted men in our whole military system. He was probably President Eisenhower's closest confidant and advisor, and we're the better off for that. President Eisenhower was a great general and a great president, but he was those things partly because of the good men that surrounded him. And I want to say just a word about Doug Brinkley. I can't agree more with Chancellor O'Brien's observation that he is one of the real promising, brilliant young historians on the way up. And as Steve gets older, if that's possible, he always seems to me to have more energy than anyone I know. Doug Brinkley is there to pick up the mantle. As for Steve, I don't know of any living American historian who has done more to give us a sense of pride in our national past and in the values that we all cherish than Professor Steve Ambrose. I've lived a long time, and in that time, I have not, frankly, known very many truly great men, but Steve Ambrose is one of them. Now, as for this question about my anti-war reputation, it's true that I, deep in my soul, could never accept the logic behind us committing young men to that Southeast Asian jungle, into a complicated civil conflict that we did not fully understand. My heart bleeds for every one of those young men that we sent to Vietnam, and especially for the 58,000 who didn't return. We've never sent better young people abroad than those who fought in Vietnam, but we gave them, in my opinion, an impossible mission. Let me just say to my fellow World War II veterans, we were treated very well after World War II by our government and by our country, including the great GI Bill that permitted so many of us to go on to higher education. So I hope every World War II veteran will lean over backwards to give support and backing to these young men who fought in Vietnam. Now, as for World War II, in my days as a bomber pilot, Steve has asked if I ever regretted it. I can't recall 1 minute that I've ever regretted my service in the Second World War. That was a war where democracy was on the line, where our security and perhaps even our survival was on the line, and I'm proud of every moment that I spent helping in my own small way to break up Hitler's war machine. There is one incident that sticks in my mind. I was interviewed on Austrian television 15 years ago on the 40th anniversary of World War II. They did a documentary about Austria's role in the Second World War. And when they found I was in the country at the University of New Orleans Summer School in Innsbruck, Austria, they asked me if I would be willing to participate in that program. Somewhat against my better judgment, I let myself get talked into it, and I got the same question that Professor Ambrose raised here today. Do you ever regret bombing beautiful cities like Vienna and Salzburg and Innsbruck and Munich and other cities that they had done some research on and knew that I had bombed? I said, in my judgment, Hitler was a monster out to crush Western civilization. So the shorthand answer is no. I don't have any regrets about my role in that effort, and Austria was a part of the Nazi enterprise. I do think of one incident that I regret. We were bombing the oil refineries in the outskirts of Vienna one day, and after we left the target, one of my crew members told me that we had a live bomb that had jammed in the bomb rack and had not fallen. Well, I said, you guys have got to get rid of that bomb. I'm not going to land this bomber with a live bomb dangling in the rack. None of us might walk away from a landing like that, so they were working with it on that little narrow catwalk over open bomb doors at 20,000 feet. I came down to about 10,000 feet, dropped out of formation, and just at high noon, exactly 12 o'clock, I remember looking at my watch, a beautiful sunshiny day, that bomb broke loose, and it hit by accident right in the middle of a peaceful little farmhouse on the Austro-Italian border. The house and all the buildings just disintegrated. They blew up in all directions. When we got back to the base that day, I was given a cable that my wife had given birth to our first child. And I thought that day, we brought a child into the world, but it's quite possible I killed somebody else's family today with their children who thought they were safely out of the war zone. And I said, yes, I regret that. That incident has stuck with me all these years. I've thought about it repeatedly. That night, about midnight, after that television program appeared, an elderly Austrian farmer called the television station, and he said, would you tell the American senator who was on television tonight that that was my farm that got bombed, and I saw the bomber coming. It was all alone. And I got my family out of the house, and we hid in a ditch near our home, and nobody was hurt. And I want him also to know that we hated Adolf Hitler. I don't know how many of my fellow Austrians felt that way, but I could not stand Hitler. And if bombing my farm in some way ended that war 1 minute earlier, I'm all for it. So, anyway, I think that's enough.